Good afternoon from Little Creek Bee Ranch. It's November 6th and it's cold outside, and there's not a lot to do with beekeeping right now, but probably inside chores and woodworking and whatever. I was in the middle of a bee chore here and just kind of bored and frustrated and having to rearrange a whole bunch of stuff, and I thought, well, this is a good time for a lesson. I've shown this before, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper, and something that a lot of people probably won't catch. Now, we see the frame rack, and yeah, okay, good, frame rack. And we've readjusted everything. We've had to put in some braces right here, these braces, because the front of this was bowed out with all the weight, so we had to suck up the distance and secure it with some frame braces, just kind of give it a little bit sturdier set with all the weight of the frames, and it adds up, you know, when you got all the frames stacked up in there. But what I'm pointing out to you is several things here. You need to separate your frames. This tape right here is to be worked. Those are frames that have got to be worked. And the next set, those got to be worked. And we'll layer in the ones that we got to work, and we'll work in quadrants, just kind of a, well, here's one quadrant, and then down there is another quadrant. And those are good frames, and those are good frames and good frames. But we'll take them kind of in quadrants and manage it that way. You get so many frames, hundreds of frames, and you got to get them out of the boxes so you can kind of see, hey, what the heck are we doing here? Digging and scrambling for frames, and some are good and some are bad and some are old and some are new, and you got a whole menagerie of frames. But here's a point that I want to share, and the only thing I can label it or give it a name is really a one-size-box principle. Now, there is an Irish beekeeper on YouTube by the name of Tim Rowe, and he had some tremendous points about this. See this brood frame? This is the larger frames, deeper frames, and then we have a medium frame, and then we have a shallow frame. And I've set them here together to show you just the size comparison. Obviously, there's a big difference between the brood frame and these other ones, and then there's just a little bit of difference between the medium and the shallow. But here's the bigger point. All this management of frames and messing around and shuffling and shifting them around, because they're all different sizes. They're all different sizes, and if you're a traditional beekeeper, then you're going to have to put up with all these variety of sizes, and you'll have to do what I'm doing, is how I was taught, is brood frames and then shallows and mediums. But you're going to have just a menagerie of frames, and it makes it harder. It makes it more frustrating when you're dealing with all the different sizes of frames. So if you kind of want to shift or change or adopt a new principle, this medium frame is what a lot of people like who want to get into one-size-box principle. In other words, they run all medium boxes to brood in and for honey. That way they can just swip and swap frames as they want to, and they're not going to be caught up in this frustration of all these different sizes of frames. And this is what ends up happening, is you've got this whole menagerie of frames here, and I just spent the last hour and a half just doing these four or five decks of frames, of brood frames right here. And then if you look here, that crisscross stack is full, and then this stack right there, all the way to the tippy top, that's full of frames, and the stack behind it's full of frames. So there's just tons, and I'm not one of the biggest beekeepers. There's other guys that have lots more. But there's got to be something said for frame management, so that by the time March or April gets here, you got some kind of grasp on where you stand with all your frames, that you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off and what you're going to do and grab, and you just don't have time to be working lots of frames. So I wanted to give you a comparison. Some of the newer beekeepers haven't really thought this way. Here's a brood frame, here's a medium, here's a shallow, or this is called an Illinois, or this is called a honey. There's a lot of slang here. But if you really want to adopt a one-size-box principle, you go with the medium, and you brood in double or triple or four mediums, or you just let the queen run free, and you can mix and match frames easily because they're all one side. You really don't want to brood in shallows because it's too shallow, and I think that defeats the purpose. And you don't want to go to all brood frames for honey. Some people do, but it's surely heavy, very, very heavy when it's full of honey. But the mediums are just right for honey and for brooding in, and I think it avoids a lot of this separation and meshing and mixing and matching and chasing around, and it limits me as a beekeeper in what I can do. So here the next few days I'll fill this rack up with a whole menagerie of shallows up high on the topper deck, and we left the shelves wider so we could mix and match brood frames. Let's see, back to mixing and matching too, because we have 3 different varieties of frames, and that's been tradition, traditional beekeeping for years and years and years. But there's just a handful of beekeepers who really are critical of this, and it's really an annoyance or a nuisance. I much rather prefer to start shifting over to all mediums and just run the whole shootery in mediums. Now some of the people are buying bees from us, and they'll always come in brood frames, so I'll have to bite the bullet and run some of this stuff in brood frames. But if you look at a shallow, and I'm coming back and forth, if you look at a shallow box when the nectar's rolling good, these girls can fill this box up and cure it and cap it in 7 or 8 days. I've seen that happen, and well, you got to come right back out and work your bees again. But when you have medium boxes, it slows that return time to the apiary down. I'm sensitive to how often am I going back out to the apiaries. So there's a lot to be said for running one size box and medium frames only. If you're going to have more than 10 colonies of bees, guess what you're going to be doing? All this here, you're going to have to manage somehow, some kind of system that you can take a look at all your frames together, and you can separate out the old ones and clean them and repair them and do whatever. This trash can right here is full of wax. It's going to be filling up with wax, old wax cuttings, and stripping out wax and pulling out wires and cleaning. So there is a management process for the frames. It's just you're going to have to put your noggin to use and come up with a good system for yourself. I try to give you as many ideas as I can. So there's all the brood frames separated, the ones that need to be worked on and the good ones and the new ones and whatever. And then there's even more. There's more back down there, and there's more in that stack there. So it's not a small project, and it ain't going to be done in a day. But if I had a large majority of all my stuff in mediums here, I think my stress level would be significantly reduced. So I really do like the idea of one size box management for bees. So I hope that helps somebody. You're seeing me right here in the middle of this. We had to pull all the frames out to do some repairs on the rack and suck up some of that bowing, and now we're back into putting all the frames back in and separating the bad ones and old ones and new ones and ones that would be repaired. And I sure would much rather have a one size box system. It would make my life much, much easier. So I hope that helps you. Have an awesome day.